everyone. Welcome to Chapter 11. This chapter, we're going to discuss managing our individual differences in behavior and how we can supervise people. By the end of this chapter, you should be able to answer these questions. In the hiring process, do employers care about someone's personality and their individual traits? How do our hidden aspects, such as our values and attitudes, affect our behavior? What are the distortions of perception that can cloud your judgment? Is it important for you as a manager to pay attention to the attitudes of your team members? What trends in workplace diversity should you be aware of? And what causes workplace stress? And how can those triggers actually be reduced? So when we look at our personality and our individual behavior, your personality is the stable psychological traits and behavioral attributes that give you your own unique identity. You can be an extrovert where you're outgoing, talkative, sociable, assertive. You're the life of the party. You can be agreeable, and that's where you're trusting and good-natured, cooperative, you're soft-hearted. Conscientious is when you're dependable and responsible. You're achievement-oriented and persistent. Your emotional stability is based on how relaxed and secured and unworried that you are. And your openness to experiences is looking at your intellectual, imaginative, curious, and broad-mindedness. So if Susan loves to party, she's the talk of the town, she talks to everyone that she comes across. Is she high in emotional stability, conscientiousness, extroversion, or agreeableness? If you said C, extroversion, you are right. She's an extrovert. And on page 338, you can read more about that. And I know I got tongue-tied when I said conscientiousness. It's definitely a tongue-tied one, right? So, how do we use these tests in the workplace? So to look at extroversion and your extroverts, those are usually tests that are associated with the success for most managers and salespeople. Your ability to talk to anyone is key. If you are a deep introvert, it is going to be very difficult for you to lead others. It's going to be very difficult for you to close deals, for you to engage with people, to bring about change, to have people make decisions because you are too deep within. An extrovert has to be outgoing and very talkative. When you're conscientious, there's a strong correlation with your performance on the job and your training performance. And so there's some cautions when using these testing in workplace, and Table 11.1 looks at those. When we're looking at the use of professionals, those that are reputable, licensed psychologists, those individuals can help you select and oversee not only the administration of these tests, but the scoring and interpretation. And we're looking at personality and psychological tests. And so why would you have some random person without the background be able to score and interpret personality and psychological tests? They're not equipped to. So you have to make sure that you have someone that's reputable and they're licensed psychologists. And not all psychologists are experts in those kinds of tests. So you have to make sure you pay close attention to where their expertise lies. Don't hire on the basis of the test results alone, right? Because anyone can be able to answer based on what they think that you want to hear. You need to use a balance of reference checks, personal interviews, ability tests to see what they're actually capable of doing, and looking at their job performance records. And then when we look at gender, racial, and ethnic bias, making sure that we are consistently and regularly assessing any possible adverse impact that those tests have on us hiring women and minorities. And since you don't want to find your company or yourself in a huge lawsuit, you need to make sure that you are conscious of that. And then looking at the fact that integrity tests work, but graphology tests do not. So when we're looking at personality traits and aptitudes, they can't be inferred from samples of people's penmanship, and because one's penmanship doesn't say whether or not they are equipped to do the job. It just means that maybe they just have sloppy handwriting, or that just is something that is not something they place as a great priority in their life. But they can be absolute geniuses and just have sloppy handwriting. So that is not a great measurement of someone's ability. But if we look at an integrity test and you can see a person who is blatantly dishonest, or it has a way of trying to hide a sense of the dishonesty, or you think that there is a greater probability of an unethical behavior, dishonest people are reportedly unable to fake that conscientiousness, right? Even on a paper and pencil test. So those integrity tests stand out. So we look at a proactive personality, and that person is going to take initiative, they're going to persevere, and they're going to keep going. They're determined. When you come up with a problem, they're looking for solutions. That's a proactive personality. Self-efficacy is your belief in your ability to do a task, and your focus on you can help yourself, and you can find the answer, make a way, find a way to get something done. Self-esteem is the extent to which you like or dislike yourself, and it's your overall self-evaluation. Learned helplessness is the debilitating lack of faith in your ability to control your environment. And so you have a person who, if they feel that they can't control their environment, it's always the damsel in distress kind of mindset. So these are the two types of core self-evaluations. Another self-evaluation is your locus of control, and that's how much you believe you control your fate through the efforts that you put out in the world. So those can be both internal and external. And there are different degrees of structure and compliance for each type, and so you have to be able to employ different reward systems for those types. Then we look at our emotional stability and our emotional intelligence. And your emotional stability is the extent to which you feel secure and unworried, and the likelihood of your experiences having negative emotions when you're under pressure. So how well you do under pressure, how well you do when you fail, how well you do when there's a setback, how well you perform and behave in times of grief. If you don't feel secure, if you're a constant worrier, then your emotional stability is most likely not stable. You're most likely like a roller coaster ride. And so looking at that, you truly want to have people on your team, and you want to be a person that is emotionally stable. You feel secure. You're not constantly worrying. You know, we'll deal with it when it comes. We're not going to cry over spilled milk. Let's pick ourselves up and keep moving on. That's an emotionally stable person. Emotional intelligence is your ability to monitor your feelings and other people's feelings, and to then use that information to help guide not only your thoughts but the actions. So based on it's almost like being an empath. You're empathetic to other people. You can tune into your feelings and check yourself. You know when you're angry, you know when you're frustrated, you know when you're sad, you know when you're depressed, you know when you're confused. And if you can also be able to read and feel those same kind of emotions from other people, then it will help you before you react to something that is said or done. It'll help you stop and reflect and say, okay, this person is very stressed, or this person is sad, or this person is angry. So let them cool off, or let me come at them in a different way. And a person that has high emotional intelligence is capable of doing this. A person with low emotional intelligence is one who is quick to be on the defensive, quick to have a retort, quick to have a comeback or something smart to say, um, quick to be on the attack, quick to break down and cry, have a temper tantrum, do silent treatments, things of that nature. That's a person with low emotional intelligence. So, how you can help boost the self-esteem of employees is using table 11.2, reinforcing positive attributes and skills that your employees possess, providing them with positive feedback whenever possible, breaking your larger projects into smaller tasks and projects. Why? Because it's easier to be able to break down something. If I hand you a full cake, a huge cake, you're not going to just shove your face right into the cake and just start eating. You're going to cut that cake up into smaller slices. The same as with a pizza. The same as with a pan of lasagna, a pot of spaghetti. You have to have smaller pieces so you can consume the full amount, right? The fourth way is to be able to express confidence in their abilities to complete their task. When you truly do believe that your person can get the job done, you express that confidence. You tell them, I know you can do it. You've done this in the past. I know you can reach that goal. I know you can complete this project. I know you can complete this task. You have all the skills, all of the energy, and talents to do so. You can do this. When you express that, it gives your team members greater confidence within themselves. And then finally, the fifth way is being able to provide coaching whenever you feel that an employee is struggling to complete their task. So anytime you see, it's no different than a person running on a track or in a marathon, and you see that they're struggling. Just that ability to tell them to loosen up their shoulders, to unclench their hands, to relax their face, to breathe, to visualize what's ahead, can actually help a runner change their form and begin to run stronger, but without as much struggle. And so it's the same kind of way in business. Your ability to see that if something's going on, no different than when I look at your progress through this class, and if I start to see that your attendance is waning and you're not turning in work, or your scores are lower than normal, my ability to then step in to see how I can help you, help guide you, show you why you're scoring low in these certain areas and how you can improve, can actually help you to perform better. So when we look at emotional intelligence, here's some of the traits that we already covered, but we're going to cover it right here on 11.2. And this was adapted from an article that was in Harvard Business Review in 2001. The article was entitled Primal Leadership, the Hidden Driver of Great Performance. And it was also in the textbook published by the Harvard Business School Press. And that book was called Primal Leadership, Realizing the Power of Emotional Intelligence. That was published a year later in 2002. So here the table shows self-awareness, which is the most essential trait. How you can read your emotions, engage your moods, so that you know how you're affecting others. Self-management is your ability to control your emotions, act with honesty, integrity in both reliable and adaptable ways, and leave your occasional bad moods outside the office. I tell people all the time, leave the drama at the door. Don't bring it in. Don't bring in home drama. Don't bring in somebody cutting you off on the highway drama. None of that. The IRS wants you. You can deal with that when you leave work, but don't bring it into the office because it will taint the entire environment. It's like a bad disease. It just spreads. The third trait is social awareness, and that's that empathy where you can show others that you care. There's an intuition that you develop that happens throughout the organization that you can vibe, you feel other people, and you know when people are having it rough, you know when people are going through something, you just feel it. And so you can keenly understand how your emotions can impact others, how the actions that you engage in can impact others. So you have to be socially aware. And then, of course, relationship management, because life is about relationships. It's not just about who you know, it's not just about what you know, it's about who you know. And so your ability to communicate clearly and convincingly, be able to disarm and dismantle conflicts, build strong personal bonds, those take you a long way. Those skill sets, those traits, put you in a better position when you need to be promoted, when someone wants to recommend you for a position within your company or elsewhere, when someone wants to recommend you for a bid for a contract. Relationship management is very important. So we look at organizational behavior, also called OB, and it helps you try not only to explain workplace behavior, but predict it so that you can lead better and motivate your employees to perform productively. And so this is not just individual behavior, but also group behavior. And so you look at the formal ways, and those are the goals and policies, hierarchy and structure, and then how that feeds into the organization. And you can look at some of the informal ways, which is our values, our attitudes, our personalities, perceptions, conflicts, and culture. And I love studying and working within the framework of organizational behavior because it's really concerned about the individuals inside of an organization. It's looking at the human element of an organization and not just a blanket approach. It really is concerned about each individual person. So when we look at our values and attitudes, your values are abstract. It's what helps guide your thinking and your behavior across various situations. Your values are placed on, sometimes tied to your religious beliefs, sometimes they're tied to how you're raised in your household, in your church, things of that nature. Your attitude is something that's learned. It's a predisposition, I'm tongue-tied today, towards any kind of given object. So your attitude can change in a whim, right? Your values are very deep-seated. Attitude can flip. You can be in a very bad mood and win the lottery an hour later, and your attitude will change. Now, let's look at the three components of attitudes. We have affective, right? And that's not to be confused with effective, but affective. Consist of your feelings or emotions about a certain situation. Cognitive is looking at your beliefs and knowledge about a situation. Behavioral is going to look at how you intend or expect to behave toward a situation. So with the statement, I am never going to eat at this restaurant again, this is reflecting behavioral, decisional, cognitive, or affective component of an attitude. If you said A, behavioral, you're correct. Read page 345 for more on this. So then we look at cognitive dissonance, and that's a psychological discomfort that you experience between your cognitive attitude and your incompatible behavior. So through this is tied its importance and control and rewards and how those all intermingle. And you can read the textbook further to see some examples of how cognitive dissonance plays a major factor in your management process and the functions of managing as well as yourself, not just others. So how we can reduce this is our changing our attitude or our behavior, and belittle the importance of the inconsistent behavior, and find consonant elements that outweigh the dissonant ones. I think these are ways that we can do it. Of course, that checking that attitude and checking your behavior that's at the forefront, right? That is one way that you can do that. So let's look at how we can think beyond profit so that we can create value for society as a whole. So when IBM celebrated its 100th anniversary, same thing, right? They offered a global service day, and 300,000 of their employees signed up to perform 2.6 million hours of service to the world. That's huge. That's 300,000 employees that volunteered 2.6 million hours of service for free. That's a great way. In West Africa, Procter & Gamble set up a Pampers mobile clinics. See, these are ways in which we can have a broad impact. So we're not just focused on the profits. You've made a lot of money. How can you give back? Perception. This is based on how we interpret and understand our environment. When we look around, what do we see? No one can tell you what you see. It's what you see and how you perceive it. If you're looking at someone's body language, what you perceive may not actually be what is reality. And so perception is how we interpret and understand. And there's 4 steps to this. Selective attention is, did I notice something? Interpretation and evaluation is, what was it that I noticed? And what does it mean to me? And then we store it in our memory because we remember it as an event, a concept, a person, and possibly all 3 things. Then we retrieve that memory and we make judgments based on it. We make decisions based on it. What do we recall about that moment? And imagine how that impacts over time, because your memory can start to skew based on other elements being introduced, especially if someone begins to add in their perception as to what they saw, and you then start to blend the two. So it can be very convoluted. And so here we have our distortions in perception. And 2 of these distortions are stereotyping and the halo effect. Stereotyping is where we're going to go based on the characteristics that we believe are assigned to a specific group of people based on sex roles, gender, age, race, ethnicity, religion, and based on that we could say certain things. So people say that all African Americans can dance, love fried chicken and watermelon. Then someone else can say Asians can't drive. Then someone else can say that all Native Americans own a casino, right? Then you can say that all white people can't dance. You see how you can use a stereotype? And so we do that. We say that blondes are dumb. We say that men are stronger than women. Women are more emotional than men. We say that old people are slow. We use these stereotypes, and if you allow that to be your absolute perception of something, then you'll start to block out the reality. You won't even allow yourself to see anything different, right? Halo effect is when you form an impression about a person based on one single trait. One trait. And that one trait becomes the absolute in your experience. You don't see anything else but that one thing. So these two things can distort your perception immensely. So if John is interviewing Bambi for a job opening at the accounting firm and he notices that she has several tattoos on both of her arms, it's clear as day. He doesn't believe that people with tattoos can be good accountants. What is he engaging in? We just answered it, right? Stereotyping. He's stereotyping. And this has happened to me before in a relationship, but also engaging with just people in general where they've seen my tattoos and they wondered, oh, how would she possibly be able to do this? Or I was in a relationship with a person who was wondering, how could she, if she went to the White House, could she conduct herself a certain way? Well, I went to the White House more than once, and I will say I held my own, tattoos and all. And so it's the stereotyping. And if a person allows that to be their perception, if they focus on that, and the halo effect, which could have been the single trait, right, the single characteristic of me, that it could really distort someone. It could actually block them from allowing you to advance in your career or things of that nature. So you have to be mindful of those two. Some other distortions in perception is the recency effect, and that's where you remember recent information better than earlier information. And so then you have your causal attributions, and that's where activities of interfering causes for observed behaviors, and fundamental attribution, where you have the self-serving bias. So these two tendencies that distort an individual's interpretation of behavior are fundamental attribution bias, which this occurs when people attribute another person's behavior to his or her personal characteristics rather than situational factors. And then you have a self-serving bias, which occurs when people take more personal responsibility for success than failure. And we have, here's this, are attractive men and women paid more than ordinary people? And a lot of people think that self-confidence is tied to good looks. And employers seem to show higher estimates for beautiful people's productivity, and that good-looking people are considered good communicators. One interesting thing about this, though, is that when this is reinforced through childhood, when this is reinforced through school, when this is reinforced through adulthood, you'll end up having attractive people who actually then begin to believe they are good communicators, even if they're not. But it's perceived that they are. Higher productivity, maybe because the people around them are actually showing them confidence and reinforcing what they do, and so of course they'll produce more. And the same with self-confidence. If I'm constantly pouring attention and love and high hopes into you, of course your shoulders are going to be back, your head's going to be held high. And so that ends up being the environment that's created. So we can also create a self-fulfilling prophecy, and this is a phenomenon where your expectations of yourselves or others lead you to behave in ways that make those expectations come true. This is also called the Pygmalion effect. And you can either reach high levels in your life, or you can just wither away based on how you, the prophecy that you place upon yourself. It can be very toxic or beneficial. So we have various work-related attitudes. Employee engagement is our individual involvement, our satisfaction and enthusiasm for work. The more engaged a person is, the more involved they are, the more satisfied they are, the more enthusiastic they are about coming into work. The lower the engagement, productivity is usually low. They're slow to come in. They're always usually talking about how many cups of coffee they need. Their attitude is bad. Their engagement is very low. Job satisfaction is the extent that you feel positive or negative about various aspects of your work. And then job involvement is the extent to which you identify or you're personally involved with your job. We look at organizational commitment, and that's the reflection of the extent to which you identify with an organization and you're committed to that organization's goals. There's a strong positive relationship between the commitment the organization has and how satisfied you are with the job. So let's look at some important workplace behaviors. Performance and productivity. As I said, the greater your performance numbers, the higher your productivity. Your absenteeism and turnover is tied to a clear indicator of how your well-being is and how engaged you are in the workplace. When you are missing a lot of days of work, there's something going on. If a company has high turnover, there's something going on. It's a red flag that comes up. It says it loud and clear. Management is at fault. There's something wrong. Your employees are not satisfied. They are not happy. They don't feel appreciated and valued. Our organizational citizenship behaviors are those employee behaviors that are not directly part of your job description. Those exceed the work role requirements. Hence, the tie into citizenship. Counterproductive work behaviors, CWB. Those are the types of behaviors that will actually harm your employees and the organization as a whole. They're counterproductive to where you're trying to take the organization, to where your employees need to be. They're toxic. So Herman spends his lunch hour drinking beer in his car in the parking lot. Is this an evaluating, discerning, counterproductive, or destructive work behavior? If you said C, you're correct. It could be considered as destructive, but it's definitely counterproductive. The company and Herman are going to go down if Herman drives drunk, comes into work drunk, has any kind of situation where that beer is smelled on him or can impair his judgment in any way. So we look at our new diversified workforce, and diversity is how we represent all people, all ages, genders, race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, capabilities, and socioeconomic backgrounds. You're taking a sampling. It's like making a great stew, a soup, or gumbo, right? It's all these different flavors that come together. That's diversity. So we look at the wheel on 11.3, and we have our organizational, external, internal dimensions, and then you see how it all ties into personality. Under our organizational dimensions, we're looking at functional levels, management status, our work location, seniority, some other key factors. In our external dimensions, we're looking at geographic locations, our marital status, parental status, income, our habits, religions, educational background, our work experience. Internal dimensions is, of course, our age, gender, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, physical ability. And that's how this all ties into with our personalities. All of those are factored in. So the internal dimensions are the human differences that exert a powerful, sustained effect throughout every stage of our lives. And it ties in the main dimensions that we all identify with first and foremost. When we look at our external dimensions, it's those personal characteristics that we acquire, we toss to the side, or we modify throughout our lives. And that could be our educational background, our marital status. We can go from single to married to divorced. Our parental status. First, we didn't have children. Now we have, 10 kids. Our religion. We can literally, be one religion and change. I could be Christian and turn around and become a Buddhist. Income. I could go from making $20,000 a year to $2.5 billion in a year. Wouldn't that be great? Our geographic location. We can move anywhere around the world. our work experience. You go from little to a lot. Recreational habits. You can go from being a homebody to then all of a sudden you find yourself out there parasailing. Your appearance. You can go from slim to thick to slim. You can go from having really poor habits of being a complete um, slob or to becoming a neat freak or vice versa. So these are all external dimensions. Can be acquired, discarded, or modified throughout our lives. Some of the trends that we have in diversity is that there's more older people in the workforce now than ever, right? We have our baby boomers who are still working, and a lot of them are being forced to work, even beyond the age of 70. We have more women working than in the past. We have more people of color in the workforce. Our LGBTQ community is growing and more visible in the workforce. We have people with differing physical and mental abilities. Our educational levels are mismatched between what we possess education-wise and what the workforce needs. Some of our barriers include our stereotypes and prejudices, our fear of discrimination against majority group members and resistance to diversity program priorities, unsupportive social atmosphere, lack of support for family demands, and lack of support for career building steps. We have to look closely at stress, and this is when you're facing enduring extraordinary demands, constraints, and various opportunities that you're not certain about, and you're not certain about your ability to handle them effectively. And what happens is that all of those tensions and energies and things start pulling at you all at the same time, and can be unbearable at times. We all have and currently are facing stress, and there's various sources for job-related stress, including your individual task demands and your individual role demands. There's some demands placed upon you as a group or from a group. There's demands the organization plays against you, and of course demands that have nothing to do with work, but they impact your job. So your boss expects you to stay late to cover the workload of someone else who's out sick, but you're supposed to be helping your mom with some work at her house tonight. So what are you suffering from? Is it role overload, role conflict, role ambiguity, or burnout? If you said B, role conflict, you're correct. Turn to page 365 in your textbook for further details on that. So let's look at some symptoms of stress. We have our physiological, which are what you start to see on your body, what your body puts you through. You're nauseous, you have sweaty palms, headaches, backaches. Your psychological symptoms are irritability, you're bored, you're nervous, angry, anxiety kicks in, you're depressed. Behavioral, sleeplessness, right? Changes in your eating habit. You're either eating too much or you're starving yourself. You're binge eating. Increased smoking, alcohol use, or drug abuse. These are all symptoms of stress. So what are some of the consequences? Well, burnout. This is where you just hit rock bottom, right? It is emotional exhaustion, mental exhaustion, and yes, even physical exhaustion. You just feel like you have no gas left in the tank. You just don't have any more get up and go. That's when you've experienced burnout. So the ways that you can help reduce some of these stressors is to create some employee assistance programs, recommend a holistic wellness approach, create supportive work environments, make jobs more interesting, less mundane, and provide career counseling services. A lot of companies feel that your career is limited to the confines of that particular company, but a great company should provide you with a way and means to elevate yourself as far up and as far out as you can within your organization, and as far up and as far out as you can in another organization. So being able to provide adequate counseling to help people to get where they need to go can definitely help reduce stress. With that, that is all that I'll be covering for Chapter 11. I hope that you dive deep into this chapter. It's really good. There's a lot of great things that you can learn to help yourself deal with stress and deal with working with other people in both work environments and personal environments. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me. Thank you, everyone.